You have joined us for our practice development webinar on Tech Essentials for the Modern Lawyer, led by Zafar Khan.
Thank you. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to provide this educational presentation. And throughout the session, we have a lot of material to cover throughout the session. If you have questions, please submit them. We're going to hold the questions for the end because the format for the discussion today is really to open people's eyes first to some of the common misconceptions around email and e-documents and privacy, as well as increase the awareness of some of the issues that are prevalent in the marketplace today. So the first two sections will be more about educating you on what you might want to be aware of. And then the last two sections, 3 and 4, will provide some solutions that you can easily implement to help protect from some of the risks or increase productivity and efficiency in your practice with your communications among your clients. At the end, we will have some time to go over questions, and we'll put up some polls, and we trust that this will be a very informative session for you, and of course provide you with some simple ways to mitigate some of the risks and improve your current legal practice from a communications perspective. So first, some of the issues that you might want to be aware of. Privacy has evolved, and with the Snowden awareness several years ago, people started to become aware that there were lots of systems out there that were able to essentially listen in or record your electronic communications. Anything that you put in an email may be recorded by what people perceive to be Big Brother with the Snowden revelations. But today, Big Brother is perceived to be big tech like Facebook or Google that is essentially recording everything that you're doing when you're using their tools and beyond that. And when you're using tools that connect to their tools or maybe somewhat part of their tools. For example, if you use a tool called WhatsApp, when you install WhatsApp, it instantly maps all your contacts in your mobile phone with Facebook's database of contacts, and then it pushes back the information so that Facebook knows or WhatsApp knows which of your contacts also have WhatsApp. In that process, by installing that app, Facebook gathers lots of information about all the contacts that you deem are important enough to have in your mobile phone book. So Big Brother today is really more about big tech. And what happens in today's environment is big tech is gathering this information for a variety of reasons, but one is to create a better profile on you as a sender of a message, or perhaps the person that you're connecting or sending that information to. And what happens is the hackers and the internet thieves have become much more sophisticated. And rather than blasting out lots of emails with links trying to get you to click on the wrong link, of course they still do that, but the smarter ones are micro-targeting those who they think are in the middle of communications that involve big money. And what they're doing is they're setting up fake businesses with fake websites, and then they're often using that front to then buy your profile information from Google or Microsoft or Yahoo or Facebook, posing as a marketer, and they will then get the profiles of the people that they think are the best targets for their internet lures. And so hacker micro-targeting becomes a much more challenging issue because the internet thieves are spending time to understand who you are and how to trick you into connecting with them and ultimately sending them by accident money. how do they get so much information on you when they connect with Google and say, we'd like to buy the profiles of, or somehow market to, or get our presence in front of all the people of this type of profile, people that are looking to buy real estate, or people that are going to certain conferences, or doing certain types of shopping, or communicating with certain keywords in the email content. Google, and somewhat Microsoft as well, will record the content in your email and will associate that content with who you're sending to, or maybe the replies you're receiving, and take keywords from that content and build a more robust profile on who you are associated with that particular email address, which becomes the key identifier in which they're selling to marketers, and also inadvertently to internet criminals. So there's a lot going on from that perspective that people should be aware of. And there are other unexpected risks. There are risks where perhaps the sender or receiver is using, for example, an email archive, and without getting into the speculation on how the Panama Papers revelation was uncovered, and how the information from one of the most prominent law firms dealing in private client services and high net worth client communications and estate planning, how that information became exposed to an international consortium of journalists that then published it on the internet. All the email correspondence, and the speculation is that they outsourced their email archive, or the technicians that were managing their email archive somehow handed over or transmitted that email archive file to this consortium of journalists that then published it on the internet. And this is not a single incident, but this is a real risk that one should understand. Who is your archive vendor? Where are you storing this information? If you use Microsoft's OneDrive, for example, all your information is mapped and analyzed by Microsoft. If you use Google Drive, it's all analyzed. All the content of everything you store is analyzed by Google. If you use a third party, you just need to be aware of what's happening to this information, because in this case with Panama Papers, and it again happened in Bermuda with the most prominent law firm in Bermuda, a very similar breach. The attorney-client privilege was foiled. Once that information was posted on the internet, that was all the correspondence between attorney and their high net worth or clients around estate planning and trust and other issues, all of that was then exposed and was fair game. The attorney-client privilege was essentially foiled in these cases. And we've written interesting blog articles in our Tech Essentials for the Modern Lawyer email series. If you're interested in more information, we will post a poll at the end and you can subscribe to it. The top issues that we see when we're working with lawyers, and we have been servicing lawyers with our technology for more than a decade, thousands and thousands of lawyers in the United States and other countries. The top issues that we hear are the needs for simplicity coupled with security. And we'll talk more about these two issues and go through some common misconceptions. But in this area of the legal profession for the Wealth Counsel, we hear that the most important item is being able to make certain communication private, but do so in a way that doesn't make it cumbersome to carry on these communications. So, for example, email encryption that makes it not only simple for the sender to use, but arguably more important, simple for the recipient to be able to receive, the intended recipient to be able to receive, reply to, add attachments, correspond back and forth without jumping through hoops and or hurdles. The second is email tracking. And with email tracking, the key item here is how do you have a record of who said what when? How do you have that peace of mind and visibility if there are deadlines? How do you have all that information in a way that will protect you in case there's a dispute in the future? In case there's a disclosure you were supposed to transmit, you want a record of transmission of those disclosures or those particular documents, not because someone might forget they received it now, but a year later or years later, if there's a potential issue, there may be questions about who said what when, who knew what when, and having that record that can be verified is also quite useful. In terms of the other three, secure large file sharing, having a simple way to do this in a manner that auto purges the data after shared, simple way to send documents, declarations for e-signature in a way that makes it very quick and easy for you as a sender to configure and send, and also for the receiver to go through the process of e-signing. And then the last one, wire fraud, one of the most sophisticated targeted attacks on the internet today is what's called wire fraud or business email compromise, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through some of the issues. So let's look at the common misconceptions on the internet today around some of these topics, starting first with privacy and second with tracking and proof of who said what when. Today's email environment, today's internet environment is far more challenging than before. And when it comes to these types of threats, they are more sophisticated. They are, there's heightened regulatory enforcement around these topics, and there are more buzzwords making these solutions all sound quite similar. So what we want to do is cut through some of that over the next few slides. So the first is this notion around this common misconception, and I'm going to use the phrase common misconception to go through a number of educational points here. These are things that many people don't either think too much about, or they're not quite aware of what these things are or why they are important. But if you are aware of some of these things, it can be a little bit eye-opening, or in fact, in some cases, shocking. So the first common misconception is around privacy. People think that their Microsoft Outlook email automatically uses what's called TLS, or transmission layer security, so that they are sending things automatically private. There are certain things that certain systems that will try to send using this secure transmission protocol if the receiver server also accepts that protocol. But it's far more complicated than that. Certainly, there are things called what's called opportunistic TLS. So if the sender is sending a message and their system is set up to send it in this manner, and the recipient server has the capability to receive the message in this particular manner, then it works. But if the receiver system is not set up properly, or one of their many receiving servers are not set up properly, then it still transmits the message, but it does so in plain text. And so it does so in an insecure manner. Opportunistic TLS, this type of secure transmission, protects, according to, if you look at the Google and Microsoft research, only 1 in 4 messages. So essentially, a significant percentage of the messages, if you're not doing something special to encrypt those messages that will deal with this issue, with the uncertainty of the receiver system, if you're not dealing with that in some additional way, then likely 25% or so of the messages you transmit are not encrypted. If you are sending by TLS, even if it is working properly at the sender and receiver side, there are also different levels of TLS. And most of the world is still using what's called TLS 1.0 or the early versions of this, which is considered, at least when you're dealing with credit card information and certain regulations, it's considered insecure TLS. So not only do you have to deal with this notion of is the receiver server set up to receive my message in this secure protocol? What level of security is being used? There's a good chance that there is either no secure transmission or it's being transmitted using this insecure protocol. So if you consider the insecure levels of TLS and the opportunistic TLS, you're in a situation where 1 in 4 emails may be sent insecure, and this can open things up to what's called a Tls downgrade attack. I won't get into the technical details here about how it works, but certainly if you're interested in reading more about this, you can look online and search on Tls downgrade attack. What's happening is there are things that can be done to trick the sending server into sending a message in the clear by tricking it into thinking that the message is not able to be transmitted through a secure connection. The second common misconception is that some users use these services called secure gateways or security gateways, and there's a misconception that these servers will also protect you. Many of these security gateways operate in the same manner that we just mentioned. If it can transmit using a secure connection, it will transmit the email securely. But if it cannot transmit using a secure connection, there's no backup. It just sends in a plain text manner. So again, if you're using these security gateway products, many times, unless there's some extra enhancement set up, many times that particular message will be sent in an insecure manner, either with insecure TLS or without TLS at all. So the risk is really 1 in 4 emails that you send. So the common problems with Simple TLS is this is that way of trying to transmit in a secure manner is it's not always automatically on at the receiving server. And there's no easy way for you as a sender to know after the fact if that message did go securely or not. And many of the privacy regulations are centered on now, today, the more modern regulations centered on requiring you to have an audit record of fact of compliance, fact of this particular email was transmitted securely. And in particular, if the recipient claims that somehow their data was breached. If they claim their data was breached and they can point to in their inbox, your email in plain text, you have no recourse in showing that that particular email was in fact sent encrypted unless you have a way to have this auditable proof of fact of encrypted delivery. Now, another common way that organizations are trying to deal with this is they will use a capability of, for example, using what's called a link retrieval system. And a link retrieval system will be a system that we've all seen where a link goes out to the receiver and it says click this link and sign up for the system and authenticate who you are, and then you can be lucky enough to receive the message that you have no idea what it says. You'll receive the message from the sender. Now, in many cases, receivers will get frustrated with this and they will not go through all the hoops and hurdles to just to read that message from you. And if you use this too much and it's not really private information that you're transmitting, people will get frustrated and it will diminish the readability of your important messages to them. Many clients just tell the sender, just send the darn thing, and the sender will, in many cases, just succumb to that and send it unencrypted. And so the more complicated the process is to get your information in a private manner to the receiver, the more likely it will be sent in an unencrypted way just to make it simpler. So simplicity is key. If the system is not simple, then it won't be used. If it's not used, then you'll have those security issues. And if you don't have a record of fact of encrypted delivery, if there's an accusation of a data breach at some point in the future, you won't have a recourse to protect yourself to say that breach must not have happened on my watch. That breach must have happened after it got to the recipient and they perhaps were not careful with the information. So the common misconceptions of privacy in summary is what sounds like it might be secure might really not be secure for all messages. You need a method of doing this that is simple enough that the sender and receiver can use it. And you need a method that also provides this record for you so you have visibility as to what in fact was sent encrypted in a record that can stand up to scrutiny if needed in the future. And also, preferably, the receiver has some visibility so they know that this particular message was tagged as encrypted, and so they know that you're taking extra measures to protect certain information that they believe is also private and should be protected and encrypted. The second category of common misconceptions is around proof of who said what when. Here there are also a lot of situations where people are using traditional email, standard email, and they should consider rethinking using standard email for certain important notices where you want to, perhaps after the fact, have a record of who said what when, what the content was in that message, what was attached, whether or not it got delivered, when it was delivered, and you want that irrefutable evidence. And people do things all the time to try to create that type of record. They'll go and they'll print an email. They'll print it from their sent folder, print to PDF or print to paper, or on an inbound email, they'll print that particular email and save it in a directory. They may send themselves an email copy. So they'll BCC themselves or they'll BCC their assistant to put a copy in the files. They might rely on their archive as a record of that correspondence. When it comes to delivery, successful delivery, a lot of people think, well, I didn't get a bounce notice, so that email must have been successfully transmitted. Sometimes people will say, well, I can determine if it was read by relying on my Outlook read receipt or some of these novelty email tracking systems that will track using an HTML link. And what do I do if someone denies having received something? Can I simply go to my sent folder and re-forward that sent item and that will resolve the dispute? So these are important things that many people are not aware of, and they're certainly common misconceptions among the lawyers that we speak to. So let me touch on these one at a time. First of all, that print or PDF of your email, either from your sent folder or in your inbox, is not a record that will stand up to scrutiny if the other party claims the message said something different. Why is this? Well, email is intended to be more of a notepad, and depending on the email program that you use, in Microsoft Outlook, Office 365 makes this very easy. You can simply go to edit the message, and it's in different menus depending on the version you have, but in Microsoft Outlook, on an inbound received message or on a sent message, you can go to edit message, and then you can change anything in that message. You can change the content, you can change the subject, you can even go to a message that was sent days ago if you missed the deadline and change the entire content of that message, retaining the timestamp of sending. You could go to an inbound email and change one or two words and save it. Once you save it, and if you try this, it's quite shocking. Once you save it and then close it and then open it up again and then print it out to a PDF, you can't tell that that message was not the original message sent or received. Now, this is the way email was designed. It was designed so you can open up an email, you could add your notes into that email, you could save that email with your notes, or you could go to the sent item and open it up and edit the message and save your notes associated with that particular message. It was not meant to be a permanent record. So this is probably one of the most important things to understand, because whether or not you do this, it's important to know that a receiver or another party could easily do this, so that if you see a PDF of a printed email with no way to have it authenticated, even if you were to be able to see the native original message file in the person's inbox, then you really can't trust it, and you might not trust it if you think, or your recollection is, that that message said something different at that point in time. Now, those that are on the call using Gmail does not make it as obvious on how you can edit a particular message received or sent, but keep in mind, all you would need to do is download your messages to Microsoft Outlook, or anyone could download their messages to Microsoft Outlook and easily manipulate the content, save it, print it to PDF, save it as a changed record. And again, this is the way email is designed. It was designed to be more of a notepad and editable message text that could be transmitted back and forth. So if you need to have evidence of who said what when as a record, in case it's important in the future, you certainly should not rely on standard email. Another common misconception is, and we hear this all the time, oh, just so that I have a record that it was transmitted, I'll blind copy myself on that particular message, or I'll copy my assistant. Certainly if the other people get the copy inside my company, then it was transmitted to the recipient. Or if there's multiple recipients, if one of them got it, then I know all of them got it. This is incorrect. This is incorrect because when you send a message and you have 3 people in the to CC or BCC field, when it hits the mail server, they're transmitted as 3 independent messages. And so those are 3 transmissions. Any one of those 3 transmissions might not be delivered. And further, if you're sending and blind copying yourself or a coworker inside your domain, that copied message won't even hit the internet. It will be, in most cases, routed just to a different directory within that mail server. And so just because you got the copy or your assistant got the copy does not mean it even made it to the internet for internet transmission, and certainly doesn't mean that each recipient received their copy. So copying yourself is not a record, and likewise, if you rely on the fact that your archive has a record of what was sent, it's the same thing. What was sent is not necessarily what was delivered or whether or not it was delivered, because that archive typically resides on the outbound mail path, and it is archiving before it reaches the internet on the sending side. Bounce notices are another common misconception. People believe that if I don't receive a bounce notice, then that message must have been delivered. And this is, again, a common misconception and a false assumption. And the reason is that many servers turn off this feature of return a bounce notice if the address is incorrect. And the reason they do this is because spammers will send out a gazillion messages to that mail server with every iteration of first name, last name, spelling, initial at that company domain. And if these bounce notices are turned on in many cases, then what will happen is there will be a lot of bounce notices being sent out to different email addresses, and that server may become blacklisted. And the specific terminology here are backscatter, blacklisting, directory harvest attacks, and so on. You can certainly look these up on the internet if you're interested in reading more. But because of this, the important thing for you is to understand is because of this, non-receipt of a bounce notice does not always mean successful delivery. And why is this important? Because even the pros, even Gmail, even Ymail or Yahoo, even Microsoft, they lose email. Email is not perfect, and there are legitimate reasons why an email that you send, once it hits the internet, may not be delivered. Most cases it is, but it may not be, and you may not receive a bounce back. So if you need that important record, you should think of alternate ways of verifying delivery. And those alternate ways are not often useful if they only work some of the time. So two common ways that people try to do this is use Microsoft Outlook read receipts for one. Microsoft Outlook has this great feature in there, and this feature allows you to request a read receipt. The challenge is the receiver has to also have Microsoft Outlook, and they can set their system to either always send a response automatically, never send a response, or ask before sending a response. Most people set this to never send a response. Now you might say, well, I always get one of these when I send it to people inside my company. And that might be because the email administrator inside your company set everyone's to always send a response. But generally when you send to external parties, you don't know if they're using Microsoft. You don't know how they've set their setting. So you may or may not get this. Now, even if you do get this, we have a great YouTube video about how to alter a Microsoft Outlook read receipt. You can see on the right, you can see that it's simple text. And again, as a simple text email that you get, it could easily be altered. Plus, it tells you nothing about what content was associated with that particular message other than the subject line. And many emails have very similar subject lines. So you don't know what content was received, what attachments were received. The timestamps can be edited with a few mouse clicks. So that is not a verifiable record. If you happen to get it back, yeah, it's some nice to know information. Most times you will get nothing back with that read receipt. And there's also this other way that companies, third-party services, try to use HTML open tracking. These will only work if the receiver's system is set to display images. If you're sending to someone with Microsoft Outlook at the receiver's end, the default setting is to not display images, and that will foil this type of open tracking. So yes, you might get some good information some of the time. Again, it tells you nothing about the content that was delivered. It doesn't give you a verifiable record. It gives you some nice visibility when it works, but many times, and certainly if the receiver is using Microsoft Outlook and does not display images by default, HTML open tracking will be foiled. So here you also need to think about what happens if there is a denial of receiving and it's an important message. How do you get this information? How do you request your IT consultant or IT department to give you information that will help you resolve the dispute? There certainly are situations where the receiver says, I never got the email, you never sent it to me, or that's not what the content was that was sent, or it was missing an attachment, or whatever it may be. The challenge here, the real dilemma, is both parties may be right, and both parties may be right, but still there's a problem. And how do you resolve this? The sender sent it, and you look at your sent folder, you know you sent it, you click that send button, but the receiver never got it. And Outlook will do this sometimes. You click send, that's moving it from one directory to another, from your compose area to the outbox, or from the outbox to the sent item. But that message sometimes will just get crunched in the Microsoft Outlook program and will never get transmitted. So you may think you sent it. It may show up in your sent folder, or it may have left your Microsoft Outlook or your desktop or your Gmail, but it may not have been delivered to the receiver for whatever reason, and there are lots of reasons. And the receiver may be right in the fact that they never received it. How do you verify this? Now, the server logs are one way to do this, and if you have a great relationship with your IT department, you might be able to, if you're just curious about what happened to a particular message that you sent a week ago or a day ago, you might say, hey, can you try to find the server logs? And they'll probably look at you as if you're crazy. You want me to look through all these server logs and try to find that particular communication. And even if they do find that communication, it's going to say that something was transmitted to this recipient at that point in time. It may have some information around the subject or a header, but it won't have information around the message content. And if there are many messages that you sent to a particular receiver over a period of time, it will be very difficult to differentiate one from the other message. And they may not even save these server logs after a period of time. So if you're asking about a message you sent a month ago or a week ago or a year ago, likely those logs are not going to be there and not going to provide the level of record that you're looking for. So ask yourself these questions. Have you ever asked your IT administrator to try to find an important email, and have they been able to find information that's more than just the log that says something was transmitted? If they present something in your archive that's associated with the log, is that the message that was in fact transmitted, or are they two different records that are saved? What was content that was sent or that was routed to the archive, and what was transmitted? So it becomes very challenging after the fact, after a year, after many months, to find that particular information around a particular transmission. Your archive can locate some email, but it generally won't package it all together to locate it with that particular information that proves the delivery. And also, if you do have the ability to have your IT staff pull all this information together, it's all going to be in text files and different log files that are going to have to be packaged together and somehow rendered authentic and put in a way that can easily be transmitted to the person that is questioning the delivery, successful delivery. So today's dilemma is really about, if there's a dispute, how do you minimize risk? How do you have a step-by-step process to resolve the dispute? The dispute might come years later when that email becomes very, very important or central to a particular issue. How long would it take for technicians to put it together and piece the analysis together, if they can even find this? How would you present this as evidence if there is a particular challenge. So we covered some common misconceptions around what you may think to be a private transmission may not be private, why if you use a service like a link retrieval service or a security gateway, why the messages may often be sent in plain text. Either the recipient gets frustrated and the sender panics and sends it in plain text just to get the message across, holding their breath, that the private information, the tax returns or whatever it is, are not going to be disclosed or discovered, or something that may have been thought to be transmitted by a secure transmission. If a particular receiver server is not working right, it may not be. It may be transmitted in plain text. In terms of the proof of who said what when, or tracking or delivery, we looked at your sent folder is not a verifiable record. Your archive may or may not have the right information. Non-receipt of a bounce notice doesn't mean successful delivery. And we discussed how easy it is to edit something in an inbox or a sent folder, print to PDF, and how it will be virtually indetectable that that's not the original message, or how easy it is for someone else to do that. We have now a tech toolkit for modern lawyers, and these are tools that organizations like the Florida Bar have recommended to every lawyer in Florida through the RPost Florida Bar arrangement for education, continuous education since 2012. And we have also third-party corporate counsel guides and court admissibility legal opinions that have been done by prominent organizations. All of these are available at the rmail.com website if people are interested in reading more. But in short, the RMail solution provides a simple toolkit to deal with all of these issues and more, to give you the courtroom edge if there's ever a dispute. The way it works is there's a send button, and we have the Microsoft Outlook interface here shown on the screen. There's a send button and a send registered button. So if it's a casual communication, click the send button. If it's consequential, click the send registered button right above it. If you're using Gmail, then in a similar way at the bottom, right built into the interface, there's the send, the blue send, and the red send registered button, and then you can opt to click track and prove, encrypt, send for recipient e-sign, and more. Those are the three main reasons people use this. With a few clicks, it can be installed in your Gmail. It can be installed into your Microsoft Outlook interface. So very, very simple. Runs inside your existing messaging interface, and you just look for that red button, not for everything, but if there's consequence about whether or not the information is exposed, if you don't want the receiver servers or archives recording that content, if you think the receiver is on Gmail and you want to keep the information private from Google, for example, or if you simply want to track and prove delivery. There are a couple capabilities included in that. The registered email, you can send it marked, so it looks like this at the receiver. They know you know they got it. They know that this is designated important. Or you can send it registered and unmarked, so it has none of these markings. But keep in mind, the attachments are there. It gives the irrefutable proof of delivery. And what comes back for every registered email message you send is a registered receipt that's routed to a receipt folder, subfolder of your inbox that's automatically created. And this receipt gives you the tracking information. It tells you for each recipient, was it delivered and opened? Was there a delivery failure? Was it legally received according to the Uniform Electronic Transaction Act definitions for legal delivery, which is also described in the legal opinion that we pointed to a few minutes ago. So you have the easy to understand level of delivery. This gives you that confidence and peace of mind of fact of delivery. It doesn't require anything to happen at the receiver's end. So whether or not they do anything with that particular email, you still get the delivery, the details, some snippets of details, the underlying forensic record if there's ever a dispute in the future, and a capability to authenticate this record. It's a standalone record that there is no third-party storage of the message content. Everything associated with the record is packaged in this attachment embedded in the receipt. So if there's a dispute, all one would need to do is forward this receipt to whoever's claiming they didn't get it. That person can simply forward it for authentication back to the RMail system. The RMail system will verify that it has not been altered and then unpack and reconstruct all of the original information, the original message content, the attachments, the server dialogues, all the forensics around that, so that it becomes a standalone, a durable and verifiable record of who said what when, third-party verified on demand. So that is one of the essential things that we would think that everyone should have if they send some information, some email where they want to have that either assurance of delivery, peace of mind around visibility of delivery, or proof of who said what when, what was delivered potentially years later. The second, now included in that is not just the registered email service that we just went through, but email encryption, e-signature, secure large file sharing, and email impostor protection. So look at RMail as really the modern lawyer's toolkit that resolves a lot of these situations that we just went through. If you click that send RMail button, you can track and prove, or you can one-click encrypt a message with the automatic encryption. There are also, and we won't get into the details here, but there are also ways to use this security gateway, RMail security gateway product, which will allow you to select certain messages or even all messages to go registered, encrypted, or for e-sign off based on the message content, the subject line, or other criteria. So you can have this backdrop, so any message that has certain criteria will automatically go encrypted or going to certain recipients. There's also the TLS and fallback to AES 256-bit PDF encryption. On the left you see the most common way people would receive the RMail encrypted message with the default settings. But the important thing is if the message can't be delivered through that secure connection, remember we said 25%, 1 in 4 messages may not be able to be delivered using the transmitted encrypted method. If it can't, the important thing is there's a fallback. There's a secondary process, automatic, so you don't have to worry about how the recipient server is working on that particular day. So it will go transmitted encrypted on the left. All the attachments are there. There's no logins, no downloads. If they want to reply encrypted, they can one-click reply encrypted. On the right is what it looks like if you either force the secondary method or they can't receive the encrypted transmission. It will wrap the message, it will print the message body to PDF, wrap the message attachments into that PDF, encrypt the PDF, and in most cases with the default setting, send an advanced password by email that they can copy, paste in, and they can view the message in the PDF reader, and they can also reply encrypted, and all attachments are there in the attachment pane in their native format. So very simple, and the receipt in this case gives you that proof of fact of encrypted delivery in case there's an accusation of a data breach in the future. A couple other important elements of this modern lawyer toolkit, RMail, is that it has a secure large file sharing built in. the secure large file sharing. You can attach up to 1 gigabyte of attachments right inside the Microsoft Outlook interface and send to the recipient. The recipient will get, and you can send it encrypted and large file, and you get the certified receipt proving the tracking around delivery and download. All of this is included, but the important differentiator is that this system auto purges those attachments from the download area after a certain amount of time, from 1 to 90 days, by default 14 days. The reason that's important is you're sending presumably sensitive information, and if you use some online file sharing services or Box or Dropbox and things like that, almost no one ever goes back and goes to delete those files, and they become a potential security exposure risk in the future. So the nice thing about this is it does make it very simple to transmit large files, and it will auto purge those files by default after 14 days. And so you don't have to worry about going back and then deleting them from the digital storage box. There's also the ability, with one extra click from inside the Outlook interface, to send for e-signature. And you can send for e-signature one-off, or you can, with one click, it will log you into RSign, and you can create templates and rules and all sorts of advanced settings around e-signature. And then finally, there's the email impostor protection. This anti-whaling technology is on by default. It can be disabled, but it's on by default. And this looks for the type of email structure where you will receive, or more likely someone in your organization will receive, an email that looks like it's coming from you. It will really be coming from an imposter. They will not be able to tell the difference. When they reply to that email, instead of that reply coming back to you, your address, because your address will be in the from, it will route out to the internet criminal. They'll go into a back and forth correspondence with someone on your staff, and typically that will end with instructions from them to your staff member to wire some client funds somewhere, and that wire information will go, and will be the wire information for the internet and criminals. So this is the most successful multi-billion-dollar internet lure that's out there today, and this anti-whaling technology will help protect you, in the sense that if you install this Outlook add-in for your staff, they'll be alerted if one of these internet lures are happening to them. So in summary, we have about 5 minutes left. What I'd like to do is ask the Wealth Council to put up some poll questions, and during those poll questions we can address any submitted questions from the attendees.
Thank you, Zafar. We don't have any questions yet, but I encourage people to submit them through the question chat box on your control panel for GoToWebinar. In the meantime, I will launch the first poll. The question is, are you currently using email encryption to protect your sensitive client communications? So please choose one of those options, and then I will launch the next one.
Okay, there is a question about pricing for the RML solution. Generally, it costs between $10 and $15 per user per month, depending on the service plan. So it's very simple to install. It's a couple clicks, and it doesn't cost very much. It's just a small monthly fee for use of the service.
We have the first answers in. It is 60, so 2/3 say no, they're not using email encryption, and 1/3 are but are not satisfied with the current solution. The next poll.
And I think as you put up the next poll question, let me just talk to this point. It's really, I think, eye-opening to see that, first of all, so many people are not using encryption today for important communication. But the second one, where many people are not satisfied with their encryption method, is generally because it makes it too complicated at the receiver side, and they often get complaints or emails back from the receiver, just send me the darn thing. So, so these are two things where simplicity becomes very important, simplicity with security. Go ahead, Monica.
Sure. The next question, which some people have already answered, is are you currently using an email service that can provide legal proof of delivery, content, and time delivered? And so far, we have only had a quarter of the people respond, but half say no and half say not sure. So in the interest of time, I'm going to close that one, and we will launch the third poll, which is, are you currently using an electronic signature service for sending documents and contracts for e-signing?
Now, with e-signature, we find in the legal profession that many people are not yet using e-signatures. The key thing here is a way that you can send for sign-off to your client, to get your client's signature on something quick and easy, a declaration, without going through, for example, without going through a complicated setup process. And RMill does include that capability. We also find that there's a difference between the sender signing something, and many lawyers will use just a PKI digital signature or a image of their scripted signature and put it onto an engagement letter, that as opposed to getting the receiver to be able to sign something. So again, we see this trend in the legal profession where many people are not yet using e-signatures, and this toolkit that we just walked you through provides all of that included, that capability to at least start experimenting with use of e-signatures.
And the poll results for that question do match your point. And the next poll question is, are you currently using an email service that can provide a warning about fraudulent business email compromise?
And this is not the common things that an antivirus or anti-spam system will detect. These are very tricky, personally, individually written emails designed to identify basically fake emails from you to someone on your staff, and they find out who your staff people are by using LinkedIn recruiter tools. And once they identify who reports to you and who might report to the people that report to you, then they start targeting those people with emails that look like they're coming from you. And the goal there is to just engage in some back and forth correspondence to lower the guard, and then at the right time ask them to send some money somewhere. Now, there are a lot of less sophisticated ways this is done, but the most sophisticated ones are very successful.
And the answers to this question is half say no and half are not sure.
And again, this is the type of thing where you might be able to detect this, but it's your staff that you should be concerned with. Again, my name is Zafar Khan, CEO of RPost. On the screen is my email address and also our website. If you'd like more information, certainly send an email to me and I can have someone on our team follow up with you. And we certainly appreciate the time to have this discussion with you.
Thank you very much, Zafar. And I will remind everyone that we have our symposium coming up this summer, Symposium 2019. And we are looking forward to seeing you all there. It is July 31st through August 2nd. You can find out more information about the agenda, the speakers, and any evening activities at wealthcouncil.com/symposium. There are just a few highlights of what we'll be offering at our event. The Fenway Park and the Thompson Island are both social events in the evening, and we have 5 concurrent tracks from which you can choose courses to attend. And we will have a full exhibit hall And I know RPost has exhibited with us in the past. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks again to Zafar. Have a great day.
Thank you.